Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong in the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there.
How would you describe human civilization? Not in terms of our accomplishments and achievements, but in terms of who we are as a species. How would you describe them as a human? And how do you think a foreign or external or alien civilization would describe us? Pause for a moment and think about your answer, and that might tell you quite a bit about who we are and maybe even who you are. Dennis Nappy II, and welcome to another episode of the Seiker Podcast here at 6 Sense Media. I'm asking this question because my mind is racing lately with really quite a few thoughts that I feel are disconnected but also related. And I'm thinking about humanity and our own evolution and the direction that it's going. I want to talk a little bit about that and two possible branches that really might be taking us to the same location based on decisions we've made and are continuing to make. How did this whole thought process start for this episode? The whole last month, I was working with the Down the Rabbit Hole team, our remote viewing team through the Future Forecasting Group, and we just wrapped our big project looking at Ezekiel's Wheel. And if you're not familiar with Ezekiel's Wheel, for me, I found out about it really on the Ancient Astronauts, or is it Ancient Astronauts, Ancient Aliens TV show on the History Channel. And it was Ezekiel, who had this encounter with something that he said was divine or godly. It was the wheel within the wheel, and then the cherubim angels came down, and then there were these things with these four faces of like a calf, of a horse, of a human. And according to Ancient Astronauts, they argue that it is some kind of extraterrestrial craft. Excuse me. What I will say is based on my data, and again, remote viewing, it's one piece of evidence among many other things that you need to compare. I will say, if we were looking at my data alone, and that's not saying that my data is correct, I was describing some kind of technology and some kind of advanced civilization behind that technology. And what's fascinating is that there were 4 viewers. It's myself and the 3 women on the team who are located in Romania, in Italy, and Australia. And Daz, our project manager, was located in the UK. And we were all blind to this target. We didn't know what the target was until we were done. Hundreds of pages later of data across the 4 of us, and then we learned what the target was. Whether we're accurate or not in describing what actually happened, the fact that we all described the same thing is phenomenal to me. And that ties into really kind of one of the underlying themes, and I brought this up in our debrief here, but for this podcast, what I'm talking about is this ability for us to share an experience through consciousness. For those of you that follow the show, for those of you that read my books, especially my Hive series, this is something I'm obsessed with it. There is something so beautiful about shared consciousness. It's just this feeling of a connection to something greater. Now, I'm not even talking something greater in the sense of God. In this experience of remote viewing, I'm talking of just something greater than myself in terms of my connection to my team. And the fact that we worked a project together in a liminal space. We weren't sitting in a room. We weren't on a Zoom call. We were at different points in time throughout the course of a month, sitting down when we had a moment and trying to describe something by words and by sketches through consciousness. And we all were in the same, again, liminal space to gather that information, and we were there together and we worked together. And that is such an amazingly beautiful thing. And I need to come back to that towards the end of this podcast, as I wrap things up talking about our evolution and the possibilities of it. What I want to talk about with Ezekiel's wheel for a minute is one of the themes I kept getting when I was experiencing this machine. And then when I was experiencing the civilization behind it, I had this feeling of kindness, just kindness. And at one point I looked at, I wanted to ask the question, like, who made the machine? But I don't think that the machine was made. I don't think that, I don't think that beings made it. I think it was grown through other machinery. That's not the point of what I'm getting at. So I had to find the right question where I wanted to know, what's the intelligence behind this technology? And I saw this, and again, it's remote viewing data. I could be making this up, but I want to talk about the feelings and the experience that I took from that. I know I'm sidetracking here a little bit, but I've seen some conversations online. There is value and importance in being able to hit a target in remote viewing. And with this Ezekiel project, we absolutely hit the target. Whether or not the information we brought back is accurate is a different story. And there is one way to evaluate remote viewing and saying, is the information accurate in the sense that, is that what really happened? We could look at it and we could say, are we picking up on Daz's intent as the tasker? Are we picking up on the story because there's a really big story and several interpretations out there that exist in consciousness? Or was Daz as the tasker able to guide us to the truth? That's our goal. That is our goal as remote viewers, to get to the truth, to the facts, beyond our perceptions. But our perceptions can get in the way and we can collect that story. That is also important, and that is significant as well. Beyond all of that, beyond is it true or not, the experience I had changed me, as do many of these projects that I go through. I learned something. I've had a thought based on something that I wrote down, whether that information came from somewhere else or just my own imagination. I had a moment of creativity, of inspiration. And to me, that is divine. That experience, I'm still thinking about it now. I'm talking to all of you about that experience right now. Hopefully, you're thinking of things that have been similar experiences, or you're going to go out and have your own experience. At that point, from that lens, does it matter if I got the right piece of information? Not through that lens. I'm not saying getting good information isn't important. I'm saying there's more to it beyond just that for me. So I'm viewing this being, and what's interesting is, like, she had these really big eyes on the side of her head. And to look at her, like, obviously she's not human. She was very tall, very slender, and I felt she was almost fish-like. And I looked at her and I said, she is beautiful. And I felt that beauty that she encompassed. And I can't describe it because she wasn't human. And I don't mean beauty in the sense of, like, wow, I'm attracted to her. She was just beautiful. And I think that also speaks to what was inside, because I kept sensing this kindness within her. Just kindness and nurturing. And as I was going through the session, I didn't know where I was in time. And I was getting a sense of, I was thinking maybe in AOL lens, as your mind's constantly trying to figure out, what is this target? And part of me was thinking this had something to do with disclosure or some kind of secret dealing with, the ET phenomena or UAP phenomena. And I was looking at the team of people who I felt were human, who were monitoring this craft. And I kept getting a sense of, like, they're not whistleblowers. And I went on this tangent here as to why. And it was like the idea of them spilling this secret was, it never even crossed their minds. because of how sacred this information felt to them. It was to do so would be catastrophic. I wrote to do so would be catastrophic, and I asked for who, and I wrote for everyone. The civil, and I said this isn't a technology they're protecting. It's a way of life, and it's a civilization. And I didn't get more data on what that meant. My point being, right now, the story's being sold to us. And there's conflicting information on this story as it comes out, but the story is being sold to us that this information is kept classified because of the technology and because the government secrets and lives are at stake, and we don't want it to fall into the wrong hands. And it's also being floated out there that these things may be hostile. They're flying over our nuclear facilities. And then you have Dr. Greer's camp, among others, who are saying, no, they're friendly and they're benevolent and we're attacking. There's all these different things out there. In my mind, I would say for the first time really as I've gone through this session, found a different perspective for me in the sense that, wow, what if all of that stuff, all of that, it's for the government, it's for the military, what if all of that really is an elaborate cover because the people who really know are protecting something so beautiful and sacred? And they are altruistic. Now, two thoughts on that. We could go down the thread of here's all the terrible things that have happened as a result of this cover-up and this conspiracy. Here's all the people who have encounters and experiences and have these awful stories. I'm not discounting that. I'm just presenting another perspective that I had. And maybe that's me interpreting something that I wish were true. And that's where it gets me thinking of our own society and our own civilization and our own potential for growth. Where are we going? And the thought that I was having, I'm just going to say this for the end, but now's a good time. The thought that I was having was about human evolution. And I was thinking that, and I said this in last month's podcast. I was talking along the lines of maybe we are becoming a collective. Maybe that is our destiny. And I really have been thinking about that for quite a bit. What if this is a natural point of evolution? Or what if we have de-evolved away from that? What if we are supposed to share in consciousness and we've forgotten how to do it, or we've been forced to forget how to do it? So whether we're supposed to evolve that way or whether we've evolved that way, my point being, if that's the trajectory, if that's where we're supposed to be naturally, what if this emergence of technology is a course correction? If we collectively have decided to accept the fate of giving up our natural ability to form shared consciousness that is readily available, not just this mindless reacting like the traditional hive. I mean shared, participatory, fully aware consciousness, a collective. If we've given that up, but that is how we are supposed to evolve, what if the emergence of AI and of technology is a course correction? We, holding up my phone for those of you watching or listening, we are more digitally connected now than ever. We can have access to just about anything and everything just by now. We don't even have to pull our phones out of our pockets for people that wear Meta glasses. You've got this augmented reality. If you're wearing a Bluetooth or an earbud, you can connect with Siri or with other AI voices and get information. It's getting easier and easier to integrate and access things. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute. We are digitally connected. We have access to social media. I can text my friends at the drop of a hat. I can make a phone call, which I don't do anymore. Yet loneliness seems to be prevalent still. People still report feeling lonely. I'll be honest, I text less and less. It's harder and harder for me to respond to texts. And I've noticed that with friends of mine as well. Yet we're on our devices all the time. Well, what are we doing? We're scrolling. So through our connection, we have become more disconnected. Why is that? In thinking of humanity, in thinking of our evolution and our connection to one another, technology at this point can't replicate, I think, what's missing. I don't think it has that ability. I suspect it's going to try. But let's go back to the moment of birth of a human child. There is great research out there about the benefits of what they call skin-to-skin contact in regulating the nervous system and other systems of the infant along with the mother. There's other studies out there, or other, I'd say, observations involving twins. And there's situations where one twin, their vitals are slipping, and the other twin is strong. And no matter what they try, they can't keep this one baby's vitals stable. So they put them in the same incubator together, so they touch, and they fall into rhythm, into harmony. We are born with that ability. And I fear, and I suspect, that with technology, before technology, we've lost it. And now technology is trying to replace it. But it can only replace, for right now, the communication aspect of it, but there's something else missing. I bring these up all the time. The heart math, electromagnetic heart, limbic resonance, mirror neurons, our ability to synchronize more than just our thoughts. I think that is significant. And again, I worry that technology is on a trajectory to replicate that. What becomes of us when that happens? Because chances are we won't care, because that need will be satisfied. I mean, we can go in 1,000 different directions. Is that once that need's satisfied, do we become the collective we were meant to be, regardless of the technological interface, and eventually learn to bypass that anyway? I don't know. But AI is currently becoming our collective memory. And what's challenging is, in a lot of ways, our challenges are going away. And as I go through, as I was talking about with remote viewing, in that shared space of consciousness, that connection to something greater than myself, I'm also reminded of conversations I've had here on this show and in other places of, I'm going to use the term divinity just to simplify things, even though now I'm going to explain what I mean by it. I don't mean it in the religious sense, just that spiritual experience through an act of creation. When you think of that act of creation, it's a beautiful thing. To write a book, to compose a piece of music, you're putting part of your essence into something like that. As you're creating something, you're bringing it forth from that limbic space, that liminal space. You're bringing it forth from the ether. You're bringing it forth from that space beyond our physical reality. You're going and you're taking something and you're bringing it back, and that is your creation. And now we go to AI and we say, make this, create this, write this. I feel that with technology, so many things that enhance the experience of being human, we're outsourcing. And maybe it will come full circle. I do believe, I'm not anti-AI, I do believe there is a responsible way to co-evolve with this mind, with this source. But we really need to be mindful. I guess the question I'm trying to ask, though, is AI replacing our consciousness, or is it expanding it? I think time will tell for us. As I'm winding this down, I was having a thought just today. I'm thinking about this a lot. I'm at that stage in my life, middle age. I hate to even say that publicly, but I'm at that stage where you realize time is limited, right? Not that I'm an old man and I've got 5 years left, if I go on a natural trajectory anyway. But you start to realize your own mortality in a different sense. It's like, I may have been on this planet more than I have years left on this planet. And I've got 3 children. And I was thinking about, I haven't been watching the news, but I did catch some clips about a few things that, didn't sound so great. I was thinking about parenting and what I'm teaching my kids. And there's values I want to instill in my kids for sure. But then I thought, well, when I'm gone, my kids are going to be here. They're going to inherit this planet. All children are going to inherit this planet. What do we want them to do with it? Do I want to give them my philosophy and my belief and say, go live your life this way? We can make the argument as to why we want to do that. But the world is constantly changing, and my children are their own unique beings. I don't want them to be me. Every one of my children, all 3 of them, they have so many qualities that are me, but they have so many qualities that are not me. And they question things, and I try to be very careful when they ask those deep questions. What is God? Do you believe in God? I try to give them an answer that guides them to figure it out for themselves. I think as we get older, and if you're listening to this show, you're probably one who keeps asking questions. As I always say, never stop questioning, keep an open mind, and let your intuition be your guide. But many people in society accept their fate, and they lose that wonder. That wonder is what leads us to creativity. That creativity is what leads us to connection. At least for me, I have these ideas and these wonders. I create something, I write a book, or I do a podcast, or I make a video, and then I reach out to connect. I share it with people. I do an interview. I talk to my friends and my family about these ideas that I've had, that I've refined in my mind. If we told everybody what to think all the time, conversation would become boring. It wouldn't become fulfilling. This act of questioning has been one of the most exciting experiences of my life, to try to figure something out and to take 50,000 words, or, in the Hive trilogy, 3 books, 150 plus thousand words to try to understand something. And some people go, whoa, that's too much. To sketch something, to draw something, to paint something, to compose something, to sing something, to go out and just, the other day I was out in nature on my property and just walking around and just taking in the beauty and just having all of these different thoughts and wonders. And we want our children to be able to do that. If we allow AI to do all of our thinking for us, to do all of our creating for us, what will the future look like for our children? Bringing this full circle, that civilization that was worth protecting, again, what I perceived was their kindness. who are we becoming? And we may not be able to perceive the potential of what we can become. But I think it helps us to have an idea. It helps us to start with looking at ourselves and saying, am I the best version of myself right now? And that doesn't mean you have to be 100% your best self all the time. But are you on that path? I'm going to wrap this up in a moment, but I remember when I got out of the Army, I was really struggling with my mental health and with the relationship that I was in was a very unhealthy relationship. I was having trouble keeping a job that I could pay my bills with. I remember I was in my living room and I said, this is it. What I have to look forward to now is I'll get drunk on the weekends. And I wasn't a drinker. And I surrendered. It lasted a few months. I gave up. I mean, I was awful. I gave up. This is it. I was with somebody who berated me whenever at that time I was reading religious texts and looking at occult symbolism and the possibility that, the Bible was referring to ETs. Remember back to those early questions when you were on this path and you started wondering, oh my gosh, maybe the Bible's not just about religion and God. Maybe it has another interpretation. Like, that's where I was. And she was just like, you're the weirdest freaking person I ever met, and you're never going to find answers. I clearly remember that. I've written about it in a couple of my books. And I just reached a point where I gave up. And I remember just the most fun I'm going to have is getting drunk on the weekends. And that was it. That was going to be my life until I died. And man, I'm so thankful that I made a shift. And my life has not been easy. There's been a lot of pain, physical and emotional, but I'm thankful for it. I'm in a place of gratitude right now. And it's because I never stopped questioning and I kept an open mind. Even with AI, even with just the path we're on. Those are my biggest questions right now. So what questions do you have? Here's your homework. What questions are you afraid to ask even yourself? That's a fun experiment. That's a fun rabbit hole to go down. Take some time and sit with that, my friends. And I'm going to leave you with that. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen. Thank you for supporting the show and myself here at 6th Sense Media. You can find all of my books, to include the Hive trilogy, at sixthsensemedia.net, or go right to the source at amazon.com. And also, I highly recommend I'm Human Food for the Archons. That's also available on Amazon. That's my bestseller there. And lastly, if you're interested in learning Reiki has been such a valuable teacher for me. I have a online self-paced Reiki course available to you through the Gumroad platform. You can find that at sixthsensemedia.net. Click on the Reiki tab, and it'll take you there. All right, my friends, as always, remember to never stop questioning, keep an open mind, and let your intuition be your guide. Thank you.
I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Be water, my friend. Be water, my friend, my friend. water, my friend, my friend.